see you guys in the dark.
My housing complex, which the units are basically small cottages, are made for 2 roommates, with a common area and attached kitchen. A small storage closet in the common area containing water pipes leading to Suite A's bathroom. The 2 private areas of the suite contained a private bedroom, a sliding patio door, private bathroom. Sounds pretty ideal. My roomie, Jed, liked to throw parties. He liked tarantulas too, and he kept 6 of them. For the sake of saving my effort in recounting this story, there's a rundown of the chaos. This run-through of incidents is going to be kind of terse, because I'm working off of a checklist that I made a long time ago. During our stay together, my roomie, he'd brought his motorcycle into our common room because he was afraid that it would be stolen. This was fine, but then he started it and let it idle for 15 minutes without opening up any windows, causing all of our stuff to smell like motorcycle exhaust. After his girlfriend had left him, he went berserk in his private bathroom with a sledgehammer, or a geologist's hammer, and smashed all of his bathroom figures. I'm not sure of this, but I believe just before she left him, she ended up screwing some guy with public lice in my bed during a party. His toilet was inoperative at this point, so he used mine for a while, until I refused him access to mine. Later I would find out that he had shat in garbage bags and kept them in the common room closet for weeks. More on this much later. He set fire to our carpet with alcohol during a party. He peed in the fridge. He shat in the fridge as well, also in the crisper drawer, on the top oven, and instead of cleaning it up, turned on the burner. His reasoning was carbon is easier to clean than feces. He left a dead cat he found somewhere in our oven for a week and forgot all about it. I discovered it much later. He had owned 6 tarantulas and would let one run around free range. He assured me that he had tamed it. I assured him that he was really stupid. He never showered whatsoever. He sold drugs in his room. He smoked pot with his friends in the common area. He spilled bong water on 2 of my textbooks. He and his friends did cocaine off of the television set in the common area. He had a party to which he invited too many people. They spilled into my room. Strangers had sex in my room at that party, in my bed. One of them had public lice. Someone took a dump in my closet. Someone had left a used condom in my slipper. I discovered all of these things after it was much too late. Morning after said party, my mother had knocked on the front door, and a stranger from that party answered and immediately threw up on her legs. Crackheads would regularly come by our apartment at all hours of the night, trying to buy drugs because of his illicit activities. Whenever I answered the door and indicated that there were no crack to be, they would sometimes get really desperate, belligerent, and violent, and refuse to leave. He put food products containing milk, meat, and cheese on the heating unit and turned it on for 3 hours to see what would happen. I could have told him what would have happened if he had asked me. He got angry at some video game he and his friends were playing in the common area, so he busted into my room while I was sleeping, punched me in the face and stomach. A few days later, he had put a tarantula in my bed sheets while I was sleeping. Thankfully, I wasn't bitten, but I was freaked out, and still sometimes jump out of my bed in the middle of the night for no reason and attack my sheets. He did leave feces in a lot of our fixtures. He'd put it in baggies and leave them in strange places. I was thankful when he used a baggie. A few words of advice for potential roommates. A light fixture is not a toilet. A heating vent is not a toilet. The sink isn't a toilet. The oven isn't one. That is all. I was pissed off at this point. He refused to clean or take care of all the messes that were listed above, so I ended up cleaning them by keeping an hourly log and catalog of what work I did and worked out a bill, which I sent to him. I was tired of cleaning things out of our refrigerator, finding turds in our crisper drawer, and on the stovetop, vomit on the carpet, in our potted plants, on the grill of our television set, urine on the carpet, kitchen floor, sleeping behind the refrigerator, dead animals in our oven, freezer units, and bags of shit hidden in our light fixtures. Have you ever had to move a refrigerator out of its little nook just to get behind it so you can clean that stuff mixed with whatever lurks behind the refrigerator in the first place. After sending him the cleaning bill and getting a refusal of the payment, I took some of his stuff, dumped it in a storage unit across town, and held it until he had paid me back. He stole some of my stuff in retaliation, but I called the cops and repossessed my belongings. He was unable to articulate to the cops that I had some of his stuff in his exchange. So I ended up basically getting my stuff back while he had to be put in their car to cool off. Upon retrospect, I think maybe he became mentally ill after losing his girlfriend, and not being able to part with his feces was part of his illness. This is just me speculating. He wasn't poor. He was from a very wealthy family. They don't come into the picture, though. This is where the ceiling begins. Put a date mark right there, because this is where shit gets really crazy. I had enough. I bought a mini fridge, a plug-in stovetop, 2 padlock footlockers, wooden bar duct tape, a remote control car, and an external padlock. My private area had 2 entrances. Here I best sum up my little fortress in this post that I made in another thread. Upon reflection, I really want to share how I kept my roommate out of my private area. It was dubbed the Home Alone security system. I had 2 potential entrances in my private area. A sliding glass patio door, regular door to the common area. I had secured the common door with a padlock on the outside, which was actually just for show. The inside was barricaded. At the bottom, I had rolled up a towel and sealed the rest of it with tape to avoid the smell or other chemical assaults from the common area. I packed against the door with my king-size bed, which was in turn secured from being dislodged by a bookshelf full of weights and books. Even if he had gotten through the padlock, he would not be able to open up the door without busting in it too. The 2 halves of the door was unsecured. I was worried that he might break the door and then gain access, so I had seized his stuff. I had put it in public storage across town. Now the sliding door is where the Home Alone shit comes in. It had a lock, but it was non-functional and only accessible from the inside. So in order to secure the door while I was away, I got a remote-controlled car, attached it to a string which was secured by a fish-eye screw at the top of the door, tied it to a security bar which would drop into the thread of the sliding door, preventing it from being opened. Anyone who has a sliding door would know how this works, but if anyone needs further explanation, I'm happy to furnish it. So when I came home, I would whip out my little remote control car, make the RC car run off and lift the bar, then gain access to the apartment. To prevent the system from being discovered, I papered the inside of the sliding door with butcher paper. I ran a wire outside of the door in an obvious manner, so that the roomie would think that this wire somehow, if tugged correctly, would undo the lock. To my knowledge, all of his attempts to get inside my apartment were by messing with this wire, which was attached to the handle of an antique coffee grinder and a paint can. If you tugged it, you'd get a weird uneven resistance as the handle cranked to turn, and the paint can danced, which added to the illusion that this wire has some secret way of ingress. I heard of this account from the neighbors because it occurred while I was away, but apparently he had lost his front door key, had some kind of intestinal problem, and had to go really bad. All the neighbors he knew had already hit up for toilet access and been refused by this point, so he's swearing like crazy, yanking at this wire, and bashing against the door in a frenzied desperation when the neighbors call the cops. Reported a B&E. When the cops show up, he's already in the bushes, just outside of my window. I hate him so much. I think he went crazy, lost all of his friends at some point, because around the time that I had barricaded it, I stopped hearing parties. In fact, I stopped hearing anything from the common area of the apartment, except for the occasional formless moans and thumping. I don't know precisely what went on in there, because I mentally washed my hands of the whole area. I did, however, start smelling odors. I taped up my door. I knew that it wasn't smart to do things like this, but I was just sick of dealing with this shit. I didn't call the landlord or anything, despite the fact that I knew he was destroying things over there. After cleaning so much of his stuff up, I just wanted the universal God of justice to see what the wreck the place would be without my presence. What I do know of what transpired over there, I can only reconstruct from forensic evidence. what precisely was destroyed, what common friends have told me in their accounts, and 2 forays over into the waste zone over the next 2 months. I essentially didn't see the front door of our apartment during this time. So my buddy's dad bought him and his brother a house to live in during university. I and another one of our friends had moved into the house, but there were still 2 rooms vacant, so they posted the vacancy online post. One random guy took one of the rooms. He moved his stuff in one day at around 5 a.m., which we thought was pretty strange to begin with. Now, he wasn't a student at our school. He actually moved to the city to be with his girlfriend, who was a student. Unfortunately for him, a couple of weeks after signing the lease, his girlfriend had dumped him. He was a strange guy to begin with. He was the filthiest person that I have ever met. One time he came home from his factory job, proceeded to make and eat a sandwich with his hands pure black from grease. It's pretty gross, and strange considering that we have sinks and soap in our house. Over time, he actually started becoming a lot more normal, probably because he came out and partied with us a lot. When we would go out, he would stay at the bar until closing and bring home some unattractive girl who was smashed out of her mind. He actually wheeled quite frequently. Then things started getting a little off. He developed a rash of some sort, which I thought was because his room was disgusting and there may have been bugs living in it. However, that's not what he thought. He told my friend that he thought he had been putting chemicals in his laundry soap to give him a rash, which of course we didn't. The paranoia continued with him misplacing his driver's license, which he thought that we had stolen and hid so that he couldn't come to the bar with us anymore. Again, wasn't true. So after a few weeks of him clearly developing paranoia, one morning the shit hit the fan. I woke up one morning at around 6 a.m. to the sound of someone running up and down the stairs. I was half asleep and didn't know what time it was, so I just assumed one of my roommates was late for class or something. Then I heard more frantic running, followed by my other normal roommate screaming. I jumped up, ran out to the kitchen. I see my normal roommate, I'll call him Steve, standing in the kitchen. Then I get around the corner and see the crazy one, I'll call him John, standing in the front of my fridge in a bathrobe, sweatpants, which were clearly women's and way too small, a baseball cap with a wolf on it. All of my and my other friend's shit had been torn out of the fridge and smashed to the ground. Pickles, milk, chili, you name it, all over the ground. Steve asked him what the hell was going on. He just replied while shivering, shaking, and sweating profusely. I took 11 Benadryl. We didn't know what to do, so we took him into the living room, sat him on the couch, and tried to calm him down. The whole time he was shaking, shivering, and sweating, and had one of the most murderous looks on his face that I've ever seen. At this point, my other, much slower to react roommate came out to see what the fuss was all about. When he walked into the living room, John looked at him with his death gaze, pointed and said, "That's my guy." I'm confident my friend has nightmares about it. So after a little while of us trying to figure out what to do while this kid mumbles random things, out of nowhere he jumps to his feet, lets out a war cry, and charges at my roommate, Steve. Now, Steve was a bouncer at some bar in our city, so when John had charged at him, he hip-tossed him around, threw him through one of the dining room chairs. After this, he jumped on him, held down his body. Then I jumped on his legs, and we held him down. He was kicking and punching us, trying to get us off of him. At this point, he started yelling some crazy things, most of which I forgot about. However, one that stuck out to me was, "The media always wins." So after holding him down for a while, and no progress to his mental state, we called 911, waited for the police and EMS to come and take him to the hospital. Now, before I explain what happened next, I should explain what happened after he got taken away. We were, of course, quite shocked and curious, so we went into his room to take a quick look at what the fuck he'd been up to all night. In his room, we found a bunch of our food, a bottle of Tylenol which was missing a substantial amount of pills, some Benadryl scattered around the floor. We also found a box that had a photo album and some other things in it, which we think most likely was all stuff from his relationship with the girl who dumped him after he moved out here with her. That being said, we figured the hat was a gift from her, and the sweatpants were probably hers. So now that the ex-girlfriend box is out there, I can continue. This is where it goes from sad and shocking to just plain creepy and frightening. While we were holding him down, he kept struggling, and in the process, his little sweatpants started coming down. They got down to about the bottom of his ass when we noticed that he was wearing a little purple woman's panties. We can only assume that they were his ex's. So we figure that most likely he tried to kill himself with pills, but instead he just ended up tripping the fuck out. We only ever saw him once again when he came to pick up his stuff and move out, but he clearly didn't want to talk about anything. In college, I had gotten an apartment with 3 dudes. I happened to be a girl. It was art school, so some crazy as expected, but this went above and beyond. These were nice guys, if a little immature. There were some annoying but hardly newsworthy points of contention. They never washed a single dish, filled the house with shit that they found at the dump, played insanely loud music. Then one of them, never a poster child for mental health, really began to lose it. It started with him getting a turtle. He kept the turtle in a tank full of water with an enormous cement block sticking halfway out of it, forgiving the purpose of giving the turtle something to climb up on. He claimed the turtle's tank, cleaned it himself, and brought the turtle worms to eat. Turtles don't eat worms. But my roommate didn't throw worms out. Instead, he kept putting the jars of worms in the kitchen. One day, we woke up to find that he emptied the jars of worms into the bathtub so that they could live there with their brethren. What? I started staying at friends' places because this roommate had come home one day with a trumpet and began playing it at all hours of the night. One morning, I come home to find this roommate had gone into my room, slashed at various possessions with a hunting knife, smeared paint on my walls, put onions in my bed, and left open containers of alcohol everywhere. When I confronted him, he said, "Miss Bean, you can't stay out all night and then come home and expect me not to have gone into your room and done some stuff." As I planned and executed my escape, my roommate's shenanigans continued. Among his offenses, he left the turpentine on the stove with the stove on 2 separate times. He left every single faucet in the house running full blast, left the front door open, and then left the apartment unattended. He laminated live goldfish to the kitchen table. When I talked to my other roommates about the crazy one, there was some general shifting from foot to foot. Some half-hearted agreements that the situation was out of hand, but a general unwillingness to deal with the situation with the defense, he's our boy. What are we supposed to do? Then they finally get evicted. They all went for a semester abroad, and I was left with all their insane, coddling mothers calling me and blaming me while I dealt with the landlords and everything else. In 2002, I went to university in Edinburgh. Initially, I was quite anxious, as it was quite away from where I'm from, which is New England. And I was the only one that I knew going there. But it is a beautiful city, and student life is great. Turns out, anyway, that Edinburgh University doesn't really present much of a cross-section of Scottish society, being largely made up, as it is, of rich English people from Surrey, eager to try out the snowy wastelands on Daddy's tab. Cue to the end of my second year. My group of friends and I are choosing who lives with who, as we move from halls to flats. My course is pretty intensive, so 9 out of 10 times, I would have to turn down any invitation for a night out, or a party. Hence, my name was not too high up on people's wish list when it came to populating their soon-to-be Uber party pad. So I got lumbered with 3 other guys. Now 2 of these guys are fine. One, Joe, a rather wealthy boy, was unknown to me, and as you'll see, turned out to be a bit of a shit. We got lucky with our flat, super close to the new Parliament, and with 3 floors for 4 people. The rent was undervalued hugely because it was brand new, and we were the first tenants ever. Everything was gleaming. It was worth about $500K apparently. Not bad for 270 each in Edinburgh. So got everything signed, and went to our prospective homes for the summer to work, except for Jay, who decided to hang around for summer and enjoy the festival. The last I saw of him is when I leave for home, having just put all of my coursework, architecture models, computer stuff, etc. into my room and locking the bedroom door behind me. About a month later, I'm heading up to Edinburgh with 2 friends. We decided to celebrate my birthday by having a week in the festival. Why not? I've already paid for the rent. On the train up, I get a phone call from one of our other flatmates telling me that he's moving out. What, I ask him, a tad surprised and concerned. It's the flat, man. It's screwed up. Joe's fucked it all up, he says. It doesn't sound good. So I tell him that I'll check it out for myself, and not to tell Joe that I'm coming. We arrive in Waverly, walk the short distance to the flat, and get ready for what awaits us. The plan was set. Go quietly straight up to my room on the top floor. Leave our stuff, and then have a look around. Up we go. As I reach the top of the stairs, I notice something different about my bedroom door. There seems to be only half of it left on the hinges. The rest is splintered across the floor. We go into my room. There are 3 tussled but empty sleeping bags. I stepped on a used condom. I survey the room. My flatmate's description was accurate. It's fucked up. The blinds have been torn and snapped off the wall. The en-suite, which was a nice flat, as I say, brand new up until now, was a tip. Piss was everywhere. Smears of what I can only assume to be shit along the shower walls. The shower head is smashed and hanging like a New York payphone. I open up my wardrobe. Coursework. Crumpled all into a ball. Architecture models, completely destroyed. My computer. Side has come off, and one of the jumpers has been shoved inside out. On inspection, the insides have been smashed. Time to go see Joe. We go down to the kitchen via the living room. The living room is off the kitchen with double doors. Pretty much one huge space. Walking in, we see about 10 sleeping bags and a mattress. We had no furniture at this stage. In the corner is a comatose Joe, half on the mattress, half on the floor, his head being on the floor. We step over him and then enter the kitchen. What follows was the most breathtaking sight that I've ever seen. Scattered amongst the spilled beans and can of beer were a large pile of cocaine, the scale of which can be only described as Scarface. The remnants about 50 lines, a bag of ketamine, 5 large bags of pills, 2 ounces of weed, many discarded pieces of foil with burn marks. The fridge is ajar. It's full to the point that it won't even close, of mushrooms. And there, in the middle of all of this, is one used syringe. I walk over to Joe to go wake him up. His eyes are deep pink. His expression on seeing me standing over him was priceless. Imagine your expression if your dad had walked in on you wanking over a picture of your mother. That's the kind of shock, shame, and fear in his eyes right now. He stares directly at me. I stare at him. Finally, he pipes up. What the fuck are you doing in my flat? Come again? Get out, man. This is my flat now. You can screw off. Go find yourself another place to stay. This went on for a little while, me pointing out the obvious, him still tripping off his tits, telling me to get out of his newly conquered territory. I'll cut this bit down, as this is getting pretty long. Basically, I looked for another flat. Eventually, I realized that I've got a good one, as it is, and shouldn't have been spending my birthday flat hunting because he decided to screw up our current flat. I decided that I'd better get the landlords involved with this. We met the very next day outside of the flat. We were staying at my mate's in the meantime. On the way, we walked down Prince's Street. We saw something rather bizarre. Some guy leaning forward off of a traffic light post in the middle of the road, staring at oncoming traffic as if wanting a fight. He then lets go and runs straight to the oncoming cars. Cue all the beeping, running over bonnets, and narrowly avoiding a bus, all while half-baked and screaming wahoo. Weird, but it is festival time after all. Anyways, I explained everything to them. They were shocked, but to their credit, understanding. They appreciated the honesty and the chance to save their expensive new property. We say thanks and stand back as they enter the flat. Now, you know that scene from Ratatouille where the woman's ceiling falls down and 10,000 rats come flooding out of the house. Yeah, it was like that, but with Spanish and French people. Some half naked, some fully, all screwed up and running as if RoboCop himself had just walked in. I've never seen so many bouncing dreadlocks in all of my life. After about 5 minutes, it's pretty quiet except for a shouting, whimpering exchange. Then just as things look like they're coming to a close, someone sprints past us heading for the flat, bumping us on the way. Woohoo! The half-naked guy pelts straight in, ready to join the party. About 3 seconds later, he comes running out again, minus the woohoo. So yeah, the karma is, he got kicked out. He lost many friends, and screwed up his degree. The only standout moment, though, was when my friends and I were sitting in my bedroom window a few minutes later. I was enjoying the fact that I no longer had to face flat hunting at the worst time of the year, or possibly be homeless. While my mates were happy to be watching the spectacle, as Joe slinked away, his girlfriend in tow, he looked back, and we all gave him a wave. A few years back when I was in college, I had an apartment with some guys, and we figured that we should get a house. The downside was that we needed an extra person, as we had 4 people, and the place was a 5-bedroom. So in my friend's most brilliant moment, he gets his girlfriend of 2 years to join us. At first, me and the other 2 didn't think that it was a great idea, until we saw that there were 2 separate leases for the house. Great, we thought. Us 3 can be downstairs, and they can go upstairs. Cut to the summer, and they break up, as we kind of expected. It was okay at first, but then the guy, who I'll call S, starts playing World of Warcraft and acting reclusive. They both started dating other people, and the girl, who I will call C, usually kept away when she was with her new guy. He had an old Bowflex upstairs, and would do some weightlifting, but seemed to only do 2 reps at a time, and always let the weight slam down, which just made me wonder how long it'd be till he hurt himself. After his workouts, he would grunt a lot and walk naked past her door. He also had a massive pile of used tissues that just sat on his desk near his monitor, apart from blowing his nose, and the other, well, I don't want to think about it. His floor was always covered in cans, clothing, books, and whatever else to the point that you couldn't see the floor anymore. We aren't sure if he showered more than once a month during this period as well. He also played WoW till about 4 every single night, vent blasting so loud that we could hear the voices throughout the entire house. We eventually fixed this by unhooking the cable modem, which we located in my other friend's bedroom. To this day, we aren't sure if he ever figured it out, considering that we could hear him yelling, "Oh, god damn it! Inside cable sucks. How does it always cut out on me at night?" So more and more time has passed. C continued to ignore him and tell us stories of his walking around naked, leaving her notes, starting up painfully awkward conversations with her, stuff like that. He had written her poetry a few times that was incredibly awful, and barely legible most of the time. We would throw quite a few parties, and he would come downstairs to the main floor halfway through the party, and then take a few swigs out of a bottle, and then run back upstairs to go play WoW. We tried to even take the party up there by bringing maybe 10 people upstairs to dance in his room while he played, so that he wouldn't feel left out. He ended up just ignoring us, and possibly getting pissed off, so we just left. So C started dating a new guy, who she eventually married, and spent a lot of time at his place. S had started dating a girl as well, but how he met her, or convinced her to date him, we will never know. The difference between the two was that S told C he didn't want them to bring new girlfriends or boyfriends to the house, but he kept bringing his new lady over. Well, one night C came home with her new boyfriend. They tried to be quiet and get up to her room without making a sound. It was about 2 a.m., and apparently shortly after they got back, so did S. Well, that couldn't have been a problem, except that he was drunk as hell. So he came into his room, started throwing things, and making a ton of noise for some reason or another. So C's new guy walks in there, says, "Hey man, we're tired and trying to sleep. Could you please just be a little quieter?" That's when he freaks out, and just sucker punches the new boyfriend. Now I feel I should mention that this guy is about 6 foot, maybe about 200 pounds or more of all muscle. He apparently played some football during his undergrad, and was tough as nails. So he takes the punch, and is a bit surprised for a second, and then grabs him, slams him to the ground. Somehow he stays cool and just holds him there, telling S to just calm down and that he's not going to hurt him. He just wants to make sure that he's not going to get punched again. So after a few seconds, he lets S get up, and bam, he gets punched again. So he slams him to the ground and pins him. At this point, me and another roommate head upstairs to find S squirming on his chest, screaming, "I've got nothing to lose," which is a line that lives on in my group of friends to this very day. So her boyfriend decides to pick him up and hand him over to me since I'm not a small dude and I can handle him. There's still a lot of screaming and threats going around, so the boyfriend just calls the cops on him while I try to calm him down outside. The cops get there. He starts mouthing off to them nonstop to the point that they warn him that they will cuff him and pop him in the car. So he goes for it. The next thing he knows, he is sitting back in the car while C's boyfriend shows the cops his bloody face. So they cart him off to jail for the night while another cop stays to talk to us. We had been standing outside in February with no coat, so we were shivering, and the cop looks at my friend and says, "You tweaking, boy?" Great cops in Indiana, let me tell you that. Cut to the summer. We have to go to court to testify about that night. The lawyer that S's family found was the worst, most disrespectful lawyer ever. Showed up late to court. Continued to ask the same questions over and over despite the judge telling him to just move on. Trying to change what we had said during the disposition, and so on. Oh, and he was from a Johnny Cochran law firm. C's boyfriend's lawyer laughed and laughed nonstop when he found that one out. I recently acquired a new roommate. The entire situation should never happened, but I needed someone to help with rent. So a Craigslist posting later, he had moved in. His name was Greg, and he discloses to me that he did have some strange sleeping behaviors. Sleep talking, walking, some night terrors. Funny thing was, I also had a history of sleepwalking, but only on rare occasions. The first incident occurred 1 week later, when I heard him screaming in the middle of the night. Since we both slept in separate rooms on different sides of the house, the screams sounded pretty distant, but enough to scare me so much that I ran to go check on him. As I'd get closer to his bedroom, he stopped screaming, so I just went back to bed. For the next month, he had no issues. I noticed that he had no friends or family that would come and visit. I never saw or heard him on the phone or texting. Then another random night, Greg started screaming. Same thing. I got up and started going to his room, but then he would stop. Then one night, I was awoken by screaming in my bedroom. I couldn't see anything in the panic, so I turned on the bedside lamp, and he was at the foot of my bed, wearing some sleeping clothes. He scared me, so I started screaming, and I woke him up. He apologized, and then went back to bed. Then the scariest thing has happened. About 2 nights later, I woke up to clanking. Sounded like tools and hammers tapping. I turned on the light to see Greg kneeling in a corner working on something with his hands. A few seconds after turning the light on, Greg froze, then slowly turned his upper body around and started blankly staring at me while I laid in bed. I was beyond creeped out, so I slowly slid out of bed and left the house. After sleeping in my truck down the road in an empty church parking lot, I returned to the house at about 8 o'clock in the morning. He was gone. All of his belongings were gone. No signs of him anywhere. It was like he never even lived there. I didn't know any of his friends or family, so I had no one to call about him. Days had turned into weeks, weeks into months. When I moved out after the lease was up, I was moving furniture out of my bedroom. In the corner of my room where I last saw Greg kneeling down, I realized that the floor vent for the air conditioner was loose. Inside the floor vent was an envelope with a ton of pictures of me sleeping. The pictures had written dates and times written on the back of the pictures. The only other item was a whittled down wooden broom handle brought to a point. I truly believe that Craig was trying to kill me that night, and he realized it, because it was the sleepwalking Greg that was going to do it. He left to save my life. It appears Greg had been coming to my room almost nightly and working on making the broom handle a stabbing weapon, and I never heard it until the last night that I had saw him. In college, I had gotten an apartment with 3 dudes. I happened to be a girl. It was art school, so some crazy as expected, but this went above and beyond. These were nice guys, if a little immature. There were some annoying but hardly newsworthy points of contention. They never washed a single dish, filled the house with shit that they found at the dump, played insanely loud music. Then one of them, never a poster child for mental health, really began to lose it. It started with him getting a turtle. He kept the turtle in a tank full of water with an enormous cement block sticking halfway out of it, forgiving the purpose of giving the turtle something to climb up on. He claimed the turtle's tank, cleaned it himself, and brought the turtle worms to eat. Turtles don't eat worms. But my roommate didn't throw worms out. Instead, he kept putting the jars of worms in the kitchen. One day we woke up to find that he emptied the jars of worms into the bathtub so that they could live there with their brethren. What? I started staying at friends' places because this roommate had come home one day with a trumpet and began playing it at all hours of the night. One morning I come home to find this roommate had gone into my room, slashed at various possessions with a hunting knife, smeared paint on my walls, put onions in my bed, and left open containers of alcohol everywhere. When I confronted him, he said, "Miss Bean, you can't stay out all night and then come home and expect me not to have gone into your room and done some stuff." As I planned and executed my escape, my roommate's shenanigans continued. Among his offenses, he left the turpentine on the stove with the stove on 2 separate times. He left every single faucet in the house running full blast, left the front door open, and then left the apartment unattended. He laminated live goldfish to the kitchen table. When I talked to my other roommates about the crazy one, there was some general shifting from foot to foot. Some half-hearted agreements that the situation was out of hand, but a general unwillingness to deal with the situation with the defense, he's our boy. What are we supposed to do? Then they finally get evicted. They all went for a semester abroad, and I was left with all their insane, coddling mothers calling me and blaming me while I dealt with the landlords and everything else.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.